Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. As we're approaching the last quarter of the financial year, some of you will be putting plans in place for the new financial year. Those plans typically involve setting new budgets across the business. This can be a significant task for some organisations, as it involves many of your team members, colleagues, stakeholders, I guess, that need to complete their piece of the puzzle to achieve a company-wide budget. Now, at face value, this exercise may appear fairly straightforward, but for those who do this regularly, there can be many steps involved that require coordination. From preparing templates, sending and receiving revised information, approvals, follow-ups, and then uploading it to the system to do the goal of comparison financial reporting. Why we're here today is that we can simplify this process by wrapping all these steps into a seamless workflow that can take the pain away from setting and revising budgets. Focus is a solution that we work with a lot at Leverage Technologies. They'll be presenting a solution that will be the answer to taking this pain away, which we'll be taking you through shortly. We'll just do some quick introductions. So I'm James Rodder from Leverage Technologies, and I'm the General Manager that looks after the MYOB Advanced team. I also have Craig from Focus on the line. He will be running through the presentation around the budgeting solution. As I was saying, Leverage and Focus have worked on a multitude of projects and customers together. It's been highly successful. So we thoroughly recommend the Focus solution around budgeting and also some of their other tools around analytics and alike. Just some housekeeping. We're targeting that this webinar is 30 minutes long with a Q&A session in the end. For those that are familiar with Zoom, there's a Q&A panel within the webinar session. So if you have any questions that you would like us to answer, please put it in there. I'll read out those questions at the end to Craig, and hopefully we'll answer those. Depending on the number of questions, some of that might have to be taken away offline or answered later, but we're happy to field as many as possible as part of today. This session is being recorded, so if you have any colleagues or other individuals that are going to have missed this session, we'll be sending that link through after the webinar to everyone that has registered. So please feel free to forward that on to anyone that might be interested. All right, so that's enough from me. I'll come back online at the end to ask any questions that you may have, or any questions of my own of Craig. But yeah, over to you, Craig.
Thank you very much, James, and thank you everyone for taking the time to have a look at our budgeting and forecasting tools. So today's agenda is very much around that the budgeting and forecasting process. So we're going to be showing you how using our tools, using the data you already have in MYOB, and not just financial data, but other parts of your business, to get a more accurate forecast. As James mentioned, budgeting seems simple on face value, but can be a real time-consuming process, especially if it's really left to one or two individuals in the organization. So we're going to show you how involving more of the team in the process is going to allow you to distribute that load across your business, having more automation and integration with other parts of your business. So I'm sure this here is, when we talk about budgeting, is something that a lot of people are going to be pretty familiar with. This is a process that a lot of businesses we see go through. There's a process of, we need to build a budget. Managers get involved in starting to pull data from various parts of the business. So pulling data out of the ERP, maybe a previous budget, a lot of copying and pasting and things like that. maybe we get salespeople or product managers or territory managers involved, and they make some changes, and we sort of repeat this process, and we go through multiple versions with a lot of heartache along the way before we actually get to the end. So it's a very static process. It becomes very standalone because once you've pulled the data out, a lot of the time that's it. It's very linear. Too many assumptions are normally involved that aren't actually based on actuals. It's just too much gut feel in there. And it's always retrospective, so very hard to make adjustments in life. So where we sort of come into the picture is we try and modernize this. So today we are going to be concentrating on that middle one, the budgeting and forecasting. For those that have seen Focus before and some of our analytics and financial statements, we will be using some data from both of those in today's presentation. But really what we're about is being able to use almost any data, even though most of your data will be in MYOB. Even if some of your data is not in MYOB, you might get sell-through data, you might have other systems in your organization that have data that you need to use to better budget and forecast. You can use those in Focus. So what using this process means that it's not like that very linear top-down process. It now is a much more inclusive process where we can actually have data flowing and people making changes in real time, all in the same active sheet, and not tripping over each other. So the budget process becomes a lot quicker, a lot easier, a lot more enjoyable in general. Some of the customer proof points, it's all good and well that I'm here talking to you about it, but we do have customers, joint customers with Leverage that have nice things to say about how our product works and what it's actually meant for them. So being able to just use the data they got better, working through complexities and shortening the amount of time any of these, like whether it's end of month for financials or building their budgets, how much quicker we can make that process means that people get that time back, or they can reinvest that time in actually using the products to find insights or to budget better. All right, that's probably enough from a slide perspective. Let's actually show you the software. I'm just going to turn my camera off, so hopefully it goes to full screen for you. So for those that haven't seen Focus before, Focus is a cloud-based application. What that means is, like MYOB, can be used on any internet-enabled device, iPads, tablets, phones. We're about making sure people can use data very, very quickly. What data, what solutions we build is up to you, and what data we present is very governed as well. So I've got a dashboard here where I've got some actuals data and some budget data. So I've built a budget, and now I can track against it. So I can look at my data in various ways. So I can see what my revenue is doing here for the financial year to date. But I could also see against the current month that I'm already 11% above the budget that I had set. I can also look at things like expenses or profit. We can have really any data that we deem necessary on a dashboard, really quick and easy. Some of these can be tracking against last year's actuals. Some can be tracking against budget. But really the subject we're talking about today is budgeting and forecasting. So being able to actually have my actual revenue number, but being able to track it not just against the budget number I set, but also the forecast number that might be an adjusted number that I've been adjusting as I've been going along based on new information after the budget has been set. So we're able to track all these numbers. And because we can visualize this data very quickly, users don't have to run multiple reports or anything like that to find this. It's a one-stop shop approach. but heavily governed. So someone may only see their revenue in the forecast for their division or department. So making it very quick and easy. Now, there's a whole bunch of analytics we can do around this, but given the shorter time today, we'll actually jump into the budget tool and just show how using this budget tool can make your life a lot easier. So what I have here is my profit and loss statement. This is my P&L for my July through June period. So you can see all my periods there. And I can come through and expand this out and see, okay, I now need to budget revenue by division. In my case, I have 3 countries that I need to budget. And I can come into any of these and see the individual GL accounts that make these numbers up. Now, something like this line here, I might not be the person that is actually making the changes to cash sales. So instead of it just being all on me to come up with these numbers, email people to find out what cash sales should be in Australia, I can actually choose to assign this over to someone. Maybe I'm going to assign this to Harry. So you'll see now this line has gone over to Harry, and I can't make changes to it. So we maintain a single version of truth. There is an approval process that Harry has to submit the changes back to me, and I have the choice to accept or reject those changes. Everything is audited. So if I have a look at the history here, we can see any changes or comments that may have been made are actually tracked. They're tracked at an individual line level. So who's touched it? And I'll show you shortly. It's also tracking it against every single cell. So everything is tracked, really making that budget process quicker. If somebody accidentally changed something, you can recover it if they've, instead of just having the undo button, if it was saved with those changes and opened by someone else, which version did it actually change in? You don't have those concerns anymore. Now, making changes, you can see I've got a formula bar up the top. So all those skills that you've already acquired doing, Excel formulas and things, they're all still here. But we don't have to just rely on those skills or someone having those skills to pull off making changes to a budget. So my cash sale line here is $871,000. That's based on last year's actuals. I could choose to say, well, I think it's going to go up by 5%. So I can apply a 5% rule to that line. It will pick up all the previous seasonality and adjust accordingly. So very quick and easy to be able to make a change to a line. The same could be said for an expense line. So in the UK, I've got some advertising costs here. Once again, I'm expecting the bills to come in a similar time, and I can grow it by a percentage, and it will take in all of that seasonality if the bills are expected to come in at the same time. We could also be adjusting to a fixed number. So we might want to allow an extra $100,000, but keep that seasonality. We can do that as well. So making changes does not have to be, a lot of calculations, a lot of formulas, making it very quick and easy. We can have multiple comparisons. So we can see the last adjustment I made means that we're $42,000 up on what we had done last year. All those changes are being tracked as mentioned. So every time I make a change, including a formula, and if I remove that formula, it retains what that formula was. So you're never going to lose your workings along the way. Now, if I come back up to my revenue section up here, you'll see that I have a sales GL line that most of my sales goes into, and I could use those spread features or change the numbers very easily. But if we're a business that sells products or provides service, or there's more complexity than just the single GL line, then we can actually make those adjustments at using data that you actually have. So if I wanted to involve some sales data, I can actually choose to connect to another part of my business, say pulling out my sales data. to control revenue. So I can choose what part of my GL or my P&L I wish to control and how I wish to budget. So I may wish to budget by salesperson. So I can choose salesperson. And then I can choose, well, if I'm going to involve the salespeople, can they actually tell me what the revenue number is? Or is that not possible? Maybe they can give me the quantity of sales. Why don't I give them what they had done last year? And I'll also allow them to dictate the unit price. So I can choose to also bring this figure in. Once again, I'm populating it with last year's actuals. So I can ask for these numbers and ask them for the revenue number as well. Or I could simply put a calculation in to say, actually derive revenue from these two numbers. Now, you might do this process for your entire business or maybe just for one of your divisions, because you might have different budget processes in different parts of your business. These are all the salespeople I have, and I can create the relationship between a salesperson and the GL revenue, in this case, sales. So now you'll see I've got $22 million. This is being populated with last year's actuals. I can now see all my salespeople, meaning that I can now assign this over to Fred, for example, to say, I need your numbers. At the moment, we're asking for total quantity and unit price. If you're, that might be fine for your business. It might not be. It might be that you sell a number of different SKUs or products. So you can introduce additional levels to your budget process. So now when I look at Fred, I can now see the product groups that we sell. For A products, we can now dictate what the unit price might be. So we'll push that forward. And then we're simply asking Fred to come through, enter in his numbers. It's deriving the value for us. And if we come back to our main tab over here, you'll see now that my sales GL line is being driven by that tab. So any changes made here are reflected here. Now, when it comes to making these changes, we've made some revenue changes. We can change some expense lines very easy. But what about people costs? That's one of the, it's a large cost in organizations, employees. So if I actually want to look and budget my employees, I can do that as well. This has another layer of encryption over the top, so not everyone will see this. Only by invitation will a user be allowed to see the data in this tab. But we still have workflow. We can assign this over to managers. We can import data from our payroll system. We can populate it with our GL codes, what their FTE is, their salaries, start dates. So, excuse me, even if you have people starting in your budgeting for future starters, when do you plan for that person to start? Which division are they going to work in, and how much are you planning to pay them? All that can flow through. You're also able to apply adjustments to that data. So if this is a long-term employee that is going to get a pay adjustment in May, and they're going to go to $200,000, you can now pop that in. It will work out what the adjustment is, how much is that going to cost you, and it's writing that back into your GL against that particular division. So giving you plenty of flexibility to budget at a more granular level for your employees, doing it all in the same sheet, but not revealing data that you don't want to users that might not be privy to this information. So just like earlier, if I expand this out, you'll see these lines like my wages and salaries and superannuation. These are all being driven by that tab, but a user may see these figures and not see who makes it up. So you can have all this data flowing through very quickly and easily. So what we've done so far is we've done some budgeting. We've built a budget. We've included some sales data. We've involved other people. We've been able to build something very quickly. We can publish this and track it just like where we started on our dashboards, and make sure that we're tracking actuals against budget. But you're also able to use your budget as a forecast. So once you've built your budget, you may wish to track how the actuals are playing out and make adjustments to your forecast based on the environment that you find yourself in. So I've published one here. So let's jump over to this one. And what you'll see is we're using the same interface. We're using the same GL structure, and we've got all of our figures in here. We've got a sales tab just like before, but now that we've actually got a forecast, excuse me, we're able to overlay our actuals. So if I scroll, I'll just make this a bit smaller. So if I scroll over here, you'll actually see I've got a flagpole here that's indicating what my actuals are to this point and what my future forecast numbers are. And I can expand these out and start making changes to those future forecast periods, either using some smarts. So smarts like get it back on budget. How much to land back on budget? How much do I get to spend for the remaining periods? Or use the average trend that we're seeing for this particular line and adjust the future periods based on what the data is telling us so far. So you can still manually adjust these, but you also have some smarts in there to make your budgeting life a little bit easier. Now, this flagpole as well is adjustable. So at the moment, it's showing my 7 months of actuals, but if I want to see as of December how things looked, I can actually see what I had previously forecasted and what actually happened. So I can move this along. If I scroll over a little bit here, you'll see now it's actually showing how I'm going, minimize that one, actuals to forecast. So I can see as of November, I was 1.5% off actuals, but much further off my forecast. So I can start to move this around and see, oh, okay, where did the wheels start to fall off? Are we forecasting very aggressively? And this may influence what I do in my future periods. This same functionality is also available at that more operational level. So here are my product groups that I sell. And I can now, once again, I can make those spread adjustments. I can manually update these. I can see previous changes that may have been made to a cell or any comments that may have been made along the way to indicate why we have done what we've done. And we're able to simply move this along and see, okay, based on what we're seeing, what actually happened in December and what we hoped, maybe we need to adjust these numbers slightly differently. Maybe I'm only going to expect a smaller number here, so you can come through and adjust those numbers accordingly. So very easy to build budgets and to build forecasts. And once again, publish these. Just like when we were on the dashboards at the start, we can track against them. So we can make sure that the business is aligned and aware of adjustments to the forecast, how far off budget we might be, or how well we're doing against budget, and why we're adjusting the forecast the way we are. For those that have to go through that budgeting and forecasting process, it becomes very much quicker process. Now, today I haven't had enough time to show you everything this tool can do. There have been a lot of things that we haven't covered, but just so you're aware, we can also do cash flow forecasting using this tool as well. So introducing a balance sheet to derive out a forecast. Once again, being able to overlay those actuals so you can project forward future movements in cash. So just conscious of the time, we might see if there are any questions.
Thanks, Craig. No, there's no questions coming through the panel at the moment. So if there are any questions out there, please put them in the Q&A panel within the Zoom webinar. But I'll fire you some, Craig. So obviously budgets are normally part of a back office function, the financial team, and then you might have people contributing that are front of office that may not have access to these areas of the system traditionally.
Yes.
So, what mechanisms or whatever are in place to give users access to their part of the financial structure to contribute to the budgeting and the like? Because as I say, like if they're in sales or if they're on the production floor and the like, they don't typically have access to the financial back end of any system.
That's correct. So we are independently governed. And you can decide if someone is to contribute to a budget and they're a sales rep. So if I chose, say, we used Fred in my demo data, if we had decided to send that over to Fred would only see his numbers in that budget. He wouldn't be able to see the revenue, the COGS, the employment costs. None of that would be visible. He would only see the section of the budget that was assigned to him and nothing else. But that's at one end. You can have divisional managers that may be introduced to the budget even as an administrator, but their security might dictate that they only see employment costs for their division. Then that's all they'll see. So whatever security you set up, it is independent from MYOB. So you can have a user that might have different rules, maybe even slightly more restricted rules in Focus than what they may have in the ERP itself.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, it's a proper enterprise solution with all the controls and restrictions and privileges in place that make sure people only see their piece of the puzzle or pie or whatever, anything like that. Okay, so now that's fantastic. So I guess my next question is, who determines the number of versions a budget goes through? Obviously, market conditions can change, or you might set out at the beginning of the year with an optimistic and a pessimistic budget and and then you have iterations of that thereafter. Who controls the versioning? Does it come from the, is it bottom up, top down? How does that normally work?
It's normally controlled by the creator of the budget, but those roles can be shared to lower levels if need be. So if you wanted to have multiple versions of a budget, they can be copied. So you can sort of set one aside as your original master copy. You can also choose who can see them and who can analyze against them. So we don't really restrict as such, but because of the workflow functionality and everything, we find that there's less, versions of a budget to get to a final budget, but a lot of people will still do a best case, worst case style budget and may only publish the best case and keep the worst case in the finance team.
Okay, brilliant. We do have a question that's come through. This ties into how does the budget from Focus get uploaded into MYOB Advance?
Yep. So we do actually have an export function. So we publish automatically back into our analytics tool. So you're able to, those dashboards and everything I was showing you at the beginning. If you do have a need to use it externally in either your ERP or some other form, there is a single click export that uses all your GL structure. So you can import that back into MYOB.
So are there any, financial structures that are more complicated than others? With a MYOB Advance, we can have sub-accounts and branches and multiple companies. Can Focus cater for all that?
It can, yes. So we generally will either use the GL structure, like your chart of account structure, so as you see it. In MYOB, you also have the option of budgeting against a GL structure that you define in Focus, but because it actually is doing it at an account level, if you down at that lower level, even if you budget in one structure and you need to report against it in another, because all the values are stored at the account level and that account matches what you have in your ERP, it will aggregate and roll up accordingly.
Brilliant. We've got another question here. Just relates to uploading data from MYOB into Focus. So obviously what you covered, earlier, you got actuals, like you can compare actuals to then assist with budgets and forecasts. How long does that typically take to ship the data from MYOB Advanced into Focus?
It's a pretty quick process. It does vary depending on your volumes of data, but we do automate the process, so it's not something that a user manually has to do. At a minimum, it updates overnight. It can be more frequent than that. Really just comes up to your requirements. But we do have some customers updating, a couple of times during the day. It's all automated, so yeah, whatever the right amount of cadence is for you is what we would recommend.
Brilliant. All right, hopefully that answers that question. Another question is just regarding, not sure if I understand this, but does it have a balancing balance sheet budget? Or does it have a balance sheet budget capability?
It does have a balance sheet. We can introduce a balance sheet, and as a byproduct, we do get a three-way cash flow. So we do actually have the option of introducing a balance sheet, and you can choose. Happy to, the person asking a question, very happy to sort of take the more detail of this.
Yeah, it may need that unless. Yeah, like obviously a balance sheet, the balance sheet section of your chart of accounts, we can do comparison reporting against that. Just the balancing piece there, I'm not too sure. Obviously, it should all reconcile and match off perfectly. But maybe there's something else that we need to delve into there.
Happy to discuss, those particular requirements, but we do have the functionality to do it. Yes.
Cool, brilliant. All right, so we've got no other questions coming through, but thanks, Craig, for taking us through the Focus solution. For me, it's when I oversee a Focus solution, the user experience looks fantastic. It seems fairly intuitive. It is a very complicated topic, and what Focus has done is really simplified it as best as possible with all the stakeholders that are involved in such a process, and then overlaid with all your analytical capabilities. So appreciate it, Craig.
No, my pleasure, and thank you for everyone for attending.
Yeah, so if there are any further questions, please reach out to the contact details that we have on screen, or reach out to the Leverage Help Desk, and we'll help you as best you can. If you would like a more tailored presentation around your specific organization's requirements, we can organize that also. So thank you everyone for jumping on this morning. We have recorded this session, and we'll be uploading it up to YouTube and sending an email out with the link to that recording. So if you have any colleagues that may be interested in this, please send it through. So great. So again, thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for jumping on, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers,
Thanks,
Craig.
everybody.